to come on board, and we'll be starting in the next about 3 to 4 minutes. So stay put as we wait for the rest to join. Thank you. And welcome to our Stay Alive webinar. We're very excited to have 2 psychologists who are going to be talking to us about mental wellness. And this is something that touches on each and every life and each and every person, and especially during the COVID period that we have today. There's a lot of stigma around the area of mental health. Catherine and Muthoni, our speakers today, will be speaking on what mental health is and how we can cope efficiently during this time while maintaining our mental health. So I'm going to welcome Muthoni and Catherine. If you could introduce yourselves, maybe you can start with Muthoni and go on to Catherine, and then we officially hand over to take on the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. And welcome everyone. As Nelly has said, the area of mental health is, there's a lot of stigma around it. So my background is actually in computer science. That's what I've studied, but I'm also a trained counseling psychologist. That's my area of passion. I'm currently pursuing a master's degree in clinical psychology. My career experience has mainly been in client management, majorly in the telecommunications industry. The last few years of my career have been in development consulting, where I've worked as an operations officer as well as in project support. So in the area of psychology, I'm a member of the Kenya Psychological Association and the African Foundation for Suicide Awareness and Prevention. So the area of mental health is an area of great passion for me, and it's an area I'm currently transitioning into. So I'll let Catherine introduce herself as well.
Catherine, you need to unmute if you could kindly unmute your microphone, Catherine.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Nelly?
Yes, we can.
You can. So thank you very much, Nelly, and welcome everybody. You can. Welcome everybody, and thank you, Nelly and Muthoni. So my background is, I have a bachelor's degree in finance. I'm a trained therapist, and I'm currently studying to get into clinical psychology. there's a difference between being a therapist and a clinical psychologist. I'm currently working at Harambee Sacco as their customer service manager, and I'm very passionate about mental health, especially in terms of self-awareness and even just emotional intelligence. I've also studied banking, and I work a lot with people. Since, as you can see, I'm in customer service, so I work a lot with people, and just even I have a lot of interest in just learning people interactions. So today we are going to be speaking about mental health, and maybe Nelly, do I start off or do I hand over to you?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So we are going to be speaking about mental health, especially in this during this COVID pandemic and what's happening. So there's been a lot of disruption, especially right now during this COVID. A lot of changes are happening. We have to do very many things differently than we are used to. The economy is being affected. Industries, unemployment levels are increasing. There's reduction in business in income. Businesses are closing down, and there's a general concern. And now we need to be very concerned even about mental health, because even as we are concerned about our physical health, mental health is also a very important part of this whole of your well-being. So we have health workers who are in the front line and at great risk. We have a lot of information of how we need to protect ourselves, the social distancing, the washing of hands, wearing of masks in public spaces, the curfews. And all these are working towards protecting ourselves against the physical illness. But what about our mental health? What do we need to do about that? And maybe we can begin by defining what we understand by what is mental health. So we say you're mentally healthy when you're able to utilize your own abilities well, when you're able to cope with normal life stresses. And this COVID, it may not look like a normal life stress, but it's actually a normal life stress because it's something that shocks your system. So it's a stress that you should be able to handle when you can productively work, when you're able to contribute to your community. Then we are saying you're mentally healthy. And having poor mental health is not the same as having mental illness. I know a lot of times we confuse the two, but they're not similar at all. Mental illness needs to be diagnosed, and it's actually a disease. But poor mental health is when you're unable to just cope with normal life situations. And like the situation we are in right now, very many of us, if we are not careful, will end up experiencing a lot of poor mental health. And right now, some of the things that have been affected by this COVID situations, some of the effects are, right now we have social distancing, so we are unable to meet our families, we are unable to meet our co-workers, and a lot of people, especially the extroverts, thrive in this physical connection. But right now that has been cut off. Work routines have been significantly shifted. Employees are now working from home. Schools have closed. Now children are at home. Families, we have family separation, especially because of this quarantine, and we are unable to visit the elderly. There's a lot of isolation, especially for young people who maybe live alone. Young adults who are just coming out of childhood and teenagehood into adulthood and have just started working. A lot of them are living alone. So there's that isolation. There's businesses that are either shutting off or are either closing off, or they are significantly have to let their employees, they have to have pay cuts, or even just let some of the employees go. And then there are health workers who have to work really long hours. And then, hello?
Sorry, Catherine. Please proceed.
So, okay, so, and then we have those with chronic illnesses that are unable to even access health facilities, either out of anxiety, of either contracting the COVID-19 ailment, or just anxiety, and therefore they don't go to hospitals. They're not able to access their medication. We have people who cannot travel to either see their families or even their businesses. We have places of entertainment that have been closed down, and yet for some people, these places of entertainment are where they're able to unwind and just sort of even cope with their normal routines. We have places of worship that have been locked down. And as a result, we have there are different effects. We have people we have now families bonding because they are together. They're able to just bond. They have more time together. We have children learning new skills. They're learning how to cook. They're learning how to just sort of clean their house, how to bake, how to do just different life skills. But then we have people who are being affected. We have, like I mentioned, we have these young people they're young adults, elderly, who live alone. So there's a lot of loneliness, there's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of anxiety. And in marketing, people who their jobs and their livelihood, they get their energy from external sources, from mingling with people. For them, this period can be very, very lonely. We have increased stress levels. We have bloodlines in terms of work between work and family life. So we have, you're a mother, you're a father, you're an employee, you're still the one you're a teacher to your child. So there's increased, you don't know how to cope. You don't know even you don't know whether you still have your job. You don't know whether you lose your business. So there's increased stress levels. There's also lack of motivation. So right now, with everything, with anxiety, with stress, you're not really motivated to just get up and do what you need to get up. There's a lot of lethargy. I mean, we have people working from their beds. You don't feel like waking up. And as a result, there's also a lot of low productivity. There's also an increase in domestic violence. And if you can collect data right now, you'll notice a spike in domestic violence, in child abuse, because what would happen previously is the fact that you can leave to go to the office, the fact that you can leave to go and do different things, that in itself was mitigating the levels at which the domestic and child abuse were happening. But right now, with people being constantly together, with people not having what to do, with people having anxiety and stress levels, we're having a lot of predators preying on either children or on the weaker gender, or on women, on male, and even emotional abuse. We're having, like, the case of the child who was the 16-year-old who was kidnapped. And even the other day, you had the people who were arrested in Jamhuri, where there were children as young as 14 years having nudities. So we'll have an increase in that. There'll also be a relapse in addiction. And addiction here is not just for abuse of drugs or substance. It's when you cannot stop doing, when you actually depend on a thing or on a task. It can even be work. So we have people addicted to work, especially the workaholics right now. We have people addicted to porn. We have people addicted to online shopping. And while this may seem like okay ways of coping, especially when you're doing shopping and working, what happens is it controls you eventually, and then you have the dysfunctionality coming in. We have, there'll be a spike in mental illness. We already have people who are mentally ill, people who have depression, who have bipolar. So what will happen is, with all this, with no one checking up on them, with them not even being, and therefore having no one, not being accountable, there'll be a spike in that. And then even with just the trauma of what happens, and if someone loses someone during this COVID period, we'll actually see a spike in that. And there's also emotional exhaustion, especially for the introverts. Like, I know Muthoni is an introvert. So when you're an introvert, you realize that this may seem like a good thing for you, because I mean, you're home, you can now work in your own space, but then everyone else is at home. So that means that even for you to recharge, it's very hard for you to recharge with everyone being there. And this can actually emotionally exhaust you. So we have that. We have we have suicidal ideation right now. We have but considering it, thinking about it, especially with stress, where you don't know whether you have a job, where you're imagining your social status will be affected, where you're wondering how you'll be able to provide for your family, where you're feeling very lonely. There'll be a lot of this where people are actually thinking about suicide, not necessarily attempting it, but thinking about it. And then we have somatic disorders. These are disorders where you actually have physical symptoms such as pain, weakness, shortness of breath. You're in distress. They cause you major distress, but they're not associated with any medical condition. And this will occur, especially when you're emotionally exhausted, when you're ignoring your emotions, when you're when you don't know how to handle and cope, you'll realize all of a sudden you have a spike in headaches, you're constantly feeling weak, and you're imagining maybe and then you're even anxious. You're imagining maybe you're sick, maybe you've contracted the disease, but really it's just all, it's mental, it's all in your head. And then, so you have all these things, but then the question comes, how do you cope? So it's important to note that everyone copes differently. We have people who have very good coping abilities, and therefore they're able to cope very, very well. They're able to handle stress. They're able to handle stress very well. And whether you're a business owner, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a team leader, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, you're all experiencing different levels of stress. And therefore, we have people who have very healthy ways of coping, and we have people who do not have, who are unable to cope in healthy ways. And so we'll be looking at these different ways. And it's important to note that even as we look at the unhealthy ways, it's not to pass judgment, but for you to even just be aware that there are better ways of coping, ways that are healthy even for you. And some of these unhealthy coping mechanisms include overconsumption of alcohol, taking too much caffeine, taking up smoking, especially for people who had already even stopped, excessive smoking. We have people who are overeating. We have people who are undereating. We have people who are binge watching TVs. I mean, from morning till almost 24 hours. People who are constantly on social media. People who are overworking. And like I mentioned, working can be an addiction. We have people who are doing compulsive online shopping. We have people who are misusing prescription medication. And unfortunately, in our country, even when you have to take prescribed medication, we still have people who will have pharmacists who will sell this medication over the counter. So we have people who are taking sleeping pills, anxiety pills, things that are supposed to be prescribed, but now they're misusing them. We have social withdrawal. This happens especially for when we talk about social withdrawal. What we mean is you sort of withdraw, you sort of move away, you stop picking your calls, you no longer connect with people physically or otherwise. And so with people wondering, noticing that their social status or imagining their social status might change, and this being an important part of them, or with them not knowing what is going to happen or how they are going to cope, we might have a lot of social withdrawal. And usually this social withdrawal might easily lead to suicidal ideations. We have people who have poor sleeping habits. They're either sleeping too little or sleeping too much. We have people who are ignoring their emotions. And when you ignore your emotions, what we mean is you're unable to acknowledge that what's happening, what is happening is terrifying. It's making you anxious. So you sort of ignore that, and you just decide that you're fine and you're okay and that you can cope. We have people now who are even resorting to gambling. And these are some of the unhealthy ways that people are coping. And it's important to know that even as we mentioned these unhealthy ways of coping, we're not saying that we're not judging. And it's important even for you to, even when you notice that either your colleagues or your family are managing and not coping well, it's important for you not to pass judgment and just to understand that people have different coping mechanisms. And so when we're doing this, what can you do to just even help you cope? One of the things that you can do is self-care. It's very, very important to take care of yourself. So and unless you can take care of yourself, you won't be able to help others cope. So first and foremost, in being able to take care of yourself, the first thing that you need to do is acknowledge what you're feeling and realize that it's okay not to be okay. And I know we say this a lot, but this is very, very important for you to realize that it's fine. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to be anxious. It's okay for you to be annoyed. It's fine. It's allowed. It's also important for you to realize that you don't have all the answers. So especially if you're in leadership and you're imagining I have this staff that I need to be able to give them all the answers, or if you're a parent and you're imagining I need to have all the answers, don't be hard on yourself. Right now, no one really has the answers. We are all navigating through this, so it's okay. And then it's important to find time to unwind, especially if you're feeling very cooped. find things that you can do. The sunlight is very good for serotonin, and serotonin is a feel-good hormone. It's a hormone that yes, it's actually a hormone that helps you feel very good about yourself. It's a mood-boosting hormone. So get some sunlight, walk a bit, just go out, unwind, just breathe in, sit in a room for 10 minutes, just breathe in, breathe out. That will really help. Minimize watching news and listening to things that are going to create more anxiety than is necessary. Yes, it's good to get information, but try to avoid listening to information that's also negative, that's just creating unnecessary anxiety. And then also find ways of amplifying your positivity. Listen to positive stories because they're out there. Listen to things that are getting better. Watch a comedy. Read an interesting book. And then get enough sleep and maintain a healthy diet. This is very important. Sleep, diet, they all help your body release the right hormones that you require. Because if you don't do this, then your body releases the hormones that then make you depressed. Also, and especially for sleep, what is happening with sleep, and I know a lot of people are struggling with sleep now, it's because you have made your bed into your workplace. So you have people waking up, your laptop is there, you're in a Zoom meeting, or you're working and you're sitting on your bed. So then your brain starts associating your bed with your workplace as opposed to sleeping place. So it's important to wake up in the morning, take a shower, move to a different workspace, so that when you come to bed, your bed realizes that you've come to actually rest. And then avoid sugary food before you go to sleep, so that you can actually be able to rest, because sleep is very, very, very important for you to just sort of re-energize. And then finding healthy ways of coping with your emotions. Journaling. I know as children we used to write diaries, and sometimes as adults we assume that this is a childish thing to do, but journaling is very, very key. For even after this COVID period, journaling is very key for you to express your emotions and even to understand your emotions. So put down what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and just look at them and understand how you're progressing. You'll be able to even notice when you're making steps to sort of even how you're coping. You'll be able to note when you're coping unhealthily, when you're coping in a healthy way. Talk to a friend or even a family member, and then make sure you acknowledge your emotions. When you're feeling sad, acknowledge them. Do not ignore them. If you're feeling anxious, you're feeling anxious. It's important to recognize these emotions, and just because unless you recognize them and understand them, then you won't be able to cope very well with them. And more importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, seek medical help, seek professional help. We have Amani Center where there are therapists. We have therapists. We have so many places right now that have therapists. Seek medical help. Do not, and there's no shame in seeking medical help, because mental illness and poor mental health is just like any other form of disease, and there should be no shame in it. Muthoni, maybe even as you take over, you can tell us some of the self-care measures you've been able to handle.
Thanks, Catherine. I know you mentioned that I'm an introvert. That's very true, and it might someone might assume that because one is an introvert, then they are thriving in this environment. But I think because it's more of a forced situation, like for me as an introvert, I re-energize myself by having alone time. So if I sitting in a room alone where there's no noise and nothing, that's how I tend to re-energize. But right now, because of the current situation, everyone is in the house, so it sort of feels as though my space is invaded. So some of the things that I've done in the midst of parenting and all the other responsibilities I have is I force myself to take a break. So where I start feeling a bit overwhelmed or frustrated, I take a break, even if it's for 10 minutes, just sit in my room for a few minutes, re-energize, and then get back to my responsibilities. I think I've also been trying to exercise. I can't say I've been very consistent, but I keep trying to exercise at least about 3 times a week. And I've picked up some new skills. I keep trying new recipes and baking and all that. In fact, I've been baking bread in the house because my sons eat quite a lot of bread, so it's getting a bit costly right now. So I've learned how to bake bread in the house so that we don't have to keep buying bread. So those are just some of the things that I've been doing right now. And I guess even as we keep talking about self-care, you can write in the comment section what different self-care measures that people are applying right now, just sort of to keep yourself going and to stay motivated. So as I continue, I think one of the areas that I've had a lot of people talk about the struggles they're having is in the workplace with the new work structure, working from home. So I think what I've had a lot of people say is working from the house is a bit challenging, and it's a bit it's interesting because on a regular basis when you're working in the office, you actually look forward to a time where you would have the ability to work from home. But now that the situation is here and it's we are forced now to work from home, we actually realize that it's not as easy as it or as ideal as we may have thought. So some of the challenges is that in your house, you may not have a designated room that you can use to carry out your office work. So you constantly have interruptions, especially if you have other family members living with you. So trying to focus on work at the same time, focus on household responsibilities can be a challenge. One of the things, I think the key thing, especially during this time, is just to exercise empathy. Empathy on all levels. And what basically empathy is the ability to understand or feel what someone else is experiencing. And I would say this from all levels, whether you're a CEO, a HR manager, a business owner, and even other members of staff, you can have, let's try to have as much empathy as we can and understanding that everyone is going through this situation and everyone has different ways of coping with it. So possibly some of the things that one can do is, if you're working from home, you can create a specific space in your house where you actually work. So this could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a room. It could be a table or a chair where you sit to focus on your work. And then try to have a routine if possible. In between, I know there are, especially for those now who are parents, you're homeschooling. At the same time, you're also trying to keep up with your emails and carry out whatever responsibilities that you need to have. If where it's possible, you could actually set out a specific time where you help your children with their school assignments and then get back to your work. And also in creating this routine, just ensure that you create breaks as well. On a normal basis, when you're working in the office, you have tea break or lunch break. So in the same way, even when you're working from home, ensure that you set out times where you actually take a break. And when you're taking a break, try to unwind. Try not to engage so much in all the news sites that are constantly feeding us with different information about what's happening right now. Take a break means it's a physical break and a mental break as well. So try to avoid things that may not enable you wind down during that time. Then as well, there's also the temptation to work long hours because there's not really a separation between work and home. So if you can set out a time where work ends, so you can decide, for example, at 5 p.m., my work stops and then I can continue to do other things that I need to do around the house. Then just for those who are in leadership, whether you're a business owner, a CEO, a HR manager, it's important to realize that everybody has a different way of coping, and you may find that some of your members of staff may be struggling a bit more than the others, or productivity levels may have shifted or gone down. It's important for you to know that how other people are coping is not a reflection on your leadership skills. Everybody copes differently. So possibly what you can think of doing is having a forum where you have an open discussion with your members of staff and just get different ideas from the team on how they feel they would be able to work better, because work still needs to go on. But maybe get ideas from the members of staff on how they feel they would be able to work better, still achieve the work goals, while at the same time maintaining a healthy balance between work and home, and in the midst of this whole situation. I know of a company that has a weekly check-in meeting, and the purpose of this meeting is not really to discuss work. They actually don't discuss anything related to work. All they do is discuss how everyone is coping. And it's very specific to where they ask, what are you feeling right now? Everyone has to give a feeling. So people will express, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry. So it's important to just keep checking in and finding out how other people are doing. And this may get a bit overwhelming for you as a leader. So if possible, you could actually have maybe rotate leadership of this check-in meeting so that you don't really feel overwhelmed with having to lead these sessions each and every time. Then another area is where there's a lot of anxiety right now. We've heard about people losing their jobs. A lot of people have been sent on unpaid leave. Others are taking pay cuts. So being away from the office, there's a lot, because you don't really know what's happening within the business. I think when you're seated in the office space with your colleagues, you sort of get to hear about any changes that may be happening within the company. But working from home, you don't really have access to such information. So it's important for people who are in leadership to have a consistent channel of communication. If there are any changes in the business or in the company, it's important for the information to come from people in leadership, just to sort of alleviate the anxiety and stress that people may be having, and just to avoid also any rumors that may be going around. And then the other thing is, Catherine mentioned about seeking professional help. So I think now is a time where people need to look into the medical covers that they have and try to see if there's an option, what options they have in terms of seeking counseling services. I know that's an area that not many people look at when they're seeking to get a medical cover, but it's important to have that. And then communicate the information to the staff, let them know how they can access this professional help. And if that's not an option in your medical cover, possibly what you could consider is getting an in-house counselor who would be available to offer any counseling services that would be required. So for Catherine, I know you've been going to the office every day. I don't know what new or what different strategies that you've employed at your workplace that are helping people cope during this time. I don't know if Catherine is still with us.
Muthoni, I think we've lost her.
Okay.
So.
All right. So I'll just proceed.
Okay.
So something else that we've had people talk about is those who are living alone. I mean, it's quite a difficult time for those who are living alone, because you don't have, I mean, there's restricted access to social support structures, especially now if you're working from home, so you don't have your colleagues that you can sort of have those social cues with. Schools are closed, places of worship are closed. So the time that you spend with friends and family is also, it's not happening right now. So some of the feelings that you may be feeling right now are loneliness and boredom and isolation. And Catherine talked about extroverts, people who are extroverted, who thrive on social interaction. So having this time where you're indoors most of the time is quite a difficult time. And I think something I've heard people talk about is cabin fever. So as much as cabin fever is not really, it's not a documented psychological disorder, it's more of, it's a popular term that people use for the symptoms or the feelings that people have when they've been isolated, when they're isolated in a room or in a building for a long period of time. And some of the symptoms that I've had people talk about is irritability, sadness, lethargy, hopelessness, inability to cope, trouble concentrating, lack of patience. So you're constantly getting, irritated, especially now if you're living with people. Food cravings is another symptom, and decreased motivation. So for cabin fever, normally people get relief by leaving the house. So if that's an option for you, that's something that you can look to do, even if it's just for a few minutes. But of course, ensure that you keep yourself safe and protected. Ensure that you observe the measures that have been put in place for your own protection. If leaving the house is not an option, you could even possibly just get to a window and try to just look outside and be present in the moment. Try to observe what's going on the outside, sort of to get you out of that feeling that you have. So it's important for those who are living alone to, as much as we have social distancing, it doesn't necessarily have to mean social isolation. So keep in touch with your friends, families, and co-workers. One way that I've seen different people do is have regular virtual calls. So it could be a call on Google Hangouts, and you can schedule it. You can say, let's say, for example, every Friday at 2 p.m. we'll have I'll have a Google Hangouts call with my friends, and you could even get up, get dressed in preparation for this meeting, and then just catch up on how everyone is doing and how everyone is coping. So that may help a bit with the different feelings that those living alone may be experiencing. Then, of course, we've talked about maintaining a healthy diet and trying to exercise. Catherine talked about journaling. Journaling is a very important way of expressing your emotions, and especially when you don't have that physical or that social connection. Journaling is a way that you can use as an outlet for your emotions or what you're feeling, and just find other healthy ways of coping, as Catherine has mentioned, whether it's listening to music, cooking, taking a walk where possible, and of course observing the measures, dancing, comedy, just different things that you would normally do to keep yourself motivated. Then another area is that of helping children cope. So for those, I don't know how many parents we have participating in the forum. Parenting has also sort of shifted, because on top of you being a parent, you're now a teacher to your children. And on top of that, you have your work responsibilities. So it's important to know that children are also, in the same way that we as adults are experiencing these difficult emotions, children as well are experiencing difficult emotions. And for children, children don't have the same coping skills as we do, as adults do. So you may find that they express their emotions in terms of behavioral changes. So you may not notice, especially for younger children, you may notice excessive crying or irritation. You may notice your children possibly becoming a bit more clingy. Things like regression, which is basically reverting back to a previous stage. So for example, if your child had stopped wetting their bed, you may find that they're now wetting their bed. Sleeping habits, eating habits, you may find that that has also changed. And even for, let's say for teenagers, you may find that they're a bit more irritable, or they're withdrawing, they're having difficulty concentrating. So for the children, it's important to take note of these behavior changes, don't ignore them. Talk to your children and allow them to ask questions and listen to what their concerns are. As we said, you don't have all the answers. So as much as you can, talk to them about the situation that's currently going on, of course, in an age-appropriate way, because it's important for them to also know that they need to observe the same measures that we as adults are taking on. So washing hands and that type of thing. Where possible, try to maintain a regular routine in some aspects. I'm a parent myself. I have two children, 5 years and 7 years. So I know even in talking about a routine, it's not something that may be very easy to maintain. But if you could have, even if it's just one aspect, whether it's mealtime, you can sit as a family and decide, so we'll have mealtime at 8 p.m. so that you have at least one thing that is constant. In the midst of all the disruption that's going on, it's good to have just, even if it's one or two things that are remaining constant each day. Then just as parents, we've talked about self-care. So before you can even help your children or your colleagues cope, it's important for you to also be aware of what emotions you're going through or you're dealing with. So it's important for you as well to practice self-care as a parent. If in the midst of you trying to teach your child, you start getting frustrated, just tell your child, I need a break. Let me take 10 minutes. Sit, whether it's in your room or wherever, take a few deep breaths in and out, and then get back to teaching them. Children as well, they feed off the emotions of parents. So it's important for you to take care of yourself first, so that helps you now transfer the same to your child. Then for the elderly right now are also experiencing the same challenges that we are going through, and more so for them because they've had, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the fact that they are high risk. And I mean, if they were to be exposed to the virus, the symptoms would be more aggravated. They'd be even worse than for younger people. So of course they have health concerns. They have concerns about their own health. And right now we've actually been advised not to visit whether it's our elderly parents or, so they have, right now they may be going through a feeling of isolation and loneliness. And they may even start to become, experience some level of depression. So for those who have their parents living away from them, just keep calling in, finding out. So apart from, especially for those parents who have chronic illnesses, so I know normally the routine is for you to call and find out how is your health, do you have your medication? So beyond finding out about their physical health, it's also important to find out how they're doing emotionally, how are they coping? They too need someone to talk to. I know some of them, like the women, have their regular meetups with their friends, their lady friends, but now it's not possible for them to do that. So just having someone that they can talk to on a regular basis would be helpful for them to get them through this season. Then of course we have healthcare workers who are at the front line of fighting this disease. They've put their lives at risk for our sake. So, I mean, we may assume that because they've been doing this for a long time that they are okay, or they know how to cope because they've seen it before. But that may not necessarily be the case. So for healthcare workers may experience what is called secondary traumatic stress, which basically is a reaction to, it's a reaction and symptoms that you experience as a result of exposure to other people's traumatic experiences. So if, for example, during this time, them being constantly seeing other people experiencing the different challenges that they're facing with COVID, and possibly other people losing their lives during this time. So that could cause some secondary traumatic stress. And some of the symptoms, it's important for them to recognize that some of the symptoms may be fatigue, fear, withdrawal, feelings of guilt, and being easily startled, and that type of thing. So when they're aware of what they are feeling during this time, it makes it easier for them to now deal with those emotions and those feelings. So some of the things they can do is that when they get, for the healthcare workers, when you get a break, possibly in between your shifts. I know right now, they're going through a lot, they're working longer hours. So of course, there's also that emotional exhaustion. But in between shifts, you can just try to get some good rest, some good enough sleep in between your shifts, and practice self-care, as we've talked about. If you enjoy reading a book, listening to podcasts, whatever it is that you feel would help you sort of de-stress, just try to engage in those activities. Then, as you said before, talk to your friends, talk to your families. And I think for healthcare workers, because you can talk also to your colleagues, just have some kind of support system amongst your colleagues, because understand, have a colleague or a friend, that you can talk to during this time, and sort of just share your experiences, so that you can, you see, if you get ideas from other people on how they are coping, you may also get different ideas on how you yourself can cope during this time. And as much as you're a healthcare worker, doesn't mean that you can't seek professional help. So where you feel overwhelmed, you should also seek counseling services just to help you cope through this season. Then there are those people who are in quarantine or isolation, who are experiencing, different emotions. You fear for your health because you may possibly have been exposed to the virus. You fear for the health of your loved ones because you may have been in contact with them. So of course it's a stressful situation. You have possibly nurses and doctors keep coming in to check on you, to find out if you're showing any symptoms of COVID-19. You'll experience loneliness, sadness, anger, frustration. There are so many emotions, different emotions that you'll experience during this time. And there's also stigma as well. A lot of people who have been in isolation have been experiencing a lot of stigma, where people don't really want to associate with you because you may feel as though they'll catch the virus as well. So because of the restricted movement that they have, it's important for you to just find out what you can do within the space that you're in to alleviate some of the stress symptoms that you may be experiencing, whether it's stretching exercises, whether it's prayer, meditation, deep breathing. Just make use of what you have, the space that you have. And then because you're in quarantine doesn't mean that you can't reach out to your friends and family. Try to talk to them on a regular basis and share openly what you're experiencing and what you're actually feeling. And then for everybody else who may have people who are quarantined or in isolation, just offer a listening ear to them. Offer support to them, listen to what their concerns are, and offer encouragement to them. Then on top of that, there are those that have mental health conditions. So there are those that have pre-existing mental health conditions. So it's important that during this time, you continue with it's important for you to have regular check-ins with your therapist. If you've been seeking therapy, it's important for you to have regular check-ins with them. And then if you feel at any point that you're having persistent and prolonged symptoms that cause significant impairment of normal functioning, so you're not able to cope with work, you're not able to cope with family life, social interactions, you feel like you're withdrawing or having suicidal thoughts, it's important for you to seek help. There's no shame in seeking help. And so we need to break that stigma about mental health. We need to break stigma about seeking professional help, and just make it normal. In the same way that we seek help when we are unwell physically, when we get sick, you go to a hospital to seek help. So in the same way, it should be normal for one to seek counseling services or see a therapist if they feel that they're overwhelmed or just going through different life changes. And finally, it's just important to know that we don't have all the answers. So it's important for us to be patient with ourselves. It's important for us to be aware and understand our emotions and have a healthy outlet to express our emotions. And then keep safe and observe all the measures that have been put in place to keep ourselves healthy during this time, healthy and safe during this time. So that's what we wanted to share. I hope that discussion has been helpful and has helped to sort of demystify this whole area of mental health. Mental health doesn't mean that you're sick. It's just something that we all have, and that's something that we need to be aware of. So I think I don't know if there are any comments or questions.
So thank you, Muthoni, for that session, and Catherine also. We can't see you, Catherine. Maybe you need to click on the video. Muthoni, thank you. We've learned that we are all not okay. This season has affected each and every person around the universe. It has not happened to this generation, so it's something completely new, and it definitely has thrown us aback. We have a lot of questions, a lot of comments. You've told us about to take self-care first and look out for our colleagues, our family members, and people around us to ensure that they're all well.
Yeah.
Now, going into the questions, I can see someone who's reached out to Muthoni and has asked, how can introverts re-energize in this session? That's one of the questions. Another question, Muthoni, is how does one self-diagnose on mental wellness? I also have another question so that Catherine can be preparing, and it's from Caroline. She says, hi, Muthoni and Catherine. Catherine, you can take on this question. This is a great session. As a team leader or people manager, how do you support your team's mental wellness and what are warning signs to look out for in your colleagues? So Catherine can tell us that, being a team leader and also being a psychologist on the other side. Maybe we can start with you, Muthoni.
Thanks, Nelly. So on the question about how introverts can re-energize, as I mentioned, I'm an introvert as well. And introverts actually re-energize by having time on their own, just alone with their thoughts. So the example I gave is that for myself, I'm at home right now. My husband is here, my children are here. I have my househelp who's also here. So I don't really have the normal space that I used to have before that would normally help me re-energize. So what I've done is just to take a break in the midst of me parenting and doing everything else that I'm doing. I just walk away, sit in, whether it's in my room or wherever it will be, in the bathroom, and just take a mental health break. What I do is just sit in silence where there's no noise. I don't have my phone with me. So that sort of helps me to just get back into the mode of what else I need to do. So I think it's just to understand for yourself as an introvert, what are the things that help you re-energize on a normal basis, even in other times, even before the whole pandemic came about. What are some of the things that you'd do to re-energize? So for me, it's sitting in silence. When I sit in a room where it's quiet and no noise, I don't hear any background noise, that helps me re-energize. So that's some of the things that you can do. Even if you're living with people, just try to get some time away for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then I'll get back to what you're doing.
Catherine,
sorry.
Thank you, Nelly. So as a team leader, first and foremost, like I said, you need to take care of yourself. So ensure you yourself, you're in the right capacity. So then you're able to notice. And there are small things that you'll be able to notice even with your staff. You'll notice that all of a sudden a staff who was very outgoing is all of a sudden very quiet. Or you'll notice a lot of outbursts. There's constant outbursts. There's or even just questions about life, and just general questions that may seem like normal questions but are not really normal. So these are the signs that you need to look out for. And you can also engage your staff, especially as a team leader. Talk to them, just ask them about their family. From these conversations, you're able to pick out a few things here and there. There'll be statements like, I've really been feeling a bit disconnected, and then engage in that. Try and find out what does it mean when they say they're a bit engaged. And then, and even when they have outbursts, and have a lot of empathy. You need a lot of empathy to be able to cope at this time, because their people are anxious. I mean, if you cannot see your parents for a very long time, or if this curfew found you in a place where now you can no longer see your family, that means there's a lot of anxiety there. So try to be as empathetic as possible. And key is, give your staff as much information as you can about what is going on, because they're anxious. They're wondering, do they still have their jobs? Are they still going to be working? Still going to be working? Are their salaries secure? So give them as much information as possible. Don't let them gather this information from rumors or from speculation. So you give them a sense of security. Whether things are going right or they are going wrong, it's important for them to have all the information that they require. That will really help the team.
So I can see a lot of comments coming through. Thank you so much. This is Watiri. Thank you so much, Muthoni and Catherine, for taking your time to share your experiences with us and tips on how to get through these uncertain times. This was a great idea. Peter, key is for employers to understand that their staff are always going through mental stress and uncertainty, as well as this will affect their focus. Team leaders need to understand their team members highly during this season so as to be able to work with them better. To remember, people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. There's a question that has been posed from someone anonymous. Thank you for the amazing forum. Due to the difficult times as a recovering alcoholic, how best can I avoid relapsing and turning to alcohol as a coping mechanism? Maybe I can give that to Catherine. Catherine?
First and foremost, it's good that they recognize. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Nelly.
Yes.
So first and foremost, it's good that they recognize that they are recovering alcoholic. One of the things that I would encourage them to do is, especially now when they need a lot of support, it's important for them to get in touch with their therapists, the people they've been working with during this recovery process, have even their group, the other team, they ensure that they see their therapist right now, ensure that they receive the right kind of support, and try as much as possible not to be alone, or even not to be in places where they're able to get a relapse. It's very, very key, and it's good that they recognize that they're recovering. So alcoholic places, avoid them. Talk to your therapist as much as possible. Talk to your family as much as possible. And if you're in a group that has other recovering alcoholics, encourage each other at this time, because this time it's very, very easy to relapse. So but it's good that they realize that they have that issue.
So another comment from Kenji. He says, learning a new skill. He finds it helpful to learn a new skill. Wende says they've realized that during this season, they found their daughter a bit clingy. And you see, these are the things you're saying. Sometimes we assume that kids are there to follow what their parents and everyone else expects of them, but they're also affected. Their systems have been interrupted. School is no more. There's the forceful learning because some of them do not want to learn. You know, they're not accustomed to online learning. So there's a lot of different disruption within our lives. So we are about to close, and maybe we can start with Muthoni, your final remarks, and then we go on to Catherine for your final remarks.
Oh, thanks, Nelly. So I've seen a lot of comments, especially about team leaders and how they can manage their team during this time without they themselves feeling overwhelmed. I think whether you're a team leader or a business owner, a parent, basically someone in a position of leadership where you have people relying on you. We've talked about self-care, but at the same time, if you're a team leader, find a way to get suggestions from your team as well. So rather than you come up with, because you don't have all the answers, you won't have all the solutions. So it's important for you to also allow your team to come up with different ways of coping during this time. Let them come up with the different ways of coping. And you can also have them, I don't know if I hear of some people having what they call a buddy system, where you assign, for example, 2 people to be each other's accountability partners, sort of. So they check up on each other, so that you don't have the responsibility of being the one to constantly check on each person in your team and find out how everyone is doing. So sort of to delegate responsibility to your team members will help you not get overwhelmed, because as a team leader, you have other responsibilities. You're concerned about yourself, you're concerned about your family. At the same time, you're concerned about your business and as well your staff members. So I think my final words would just be about let's talk more about mental health. There's nothing wrong with accepting or acknowledging that you may be going through a stressful time. We are not superheroes. We are human beings, and we all feel. We all have emotions. So just practice being present in the moment, and observe and try to understand the different emotions that you're feeling. Because once you're able to understand them, then you can have a better way of reacting or responding to those emotions. Yeah, so those are my final remarks on this. Catherine?
Thank you, Muthoni. So one of the things that I'll say, if you realize, instead of, especially for relapse, if you realize that you have a specific addiction, you can actually find, like the alcoholic, the guy who was talking about being an alcoholic, find ways to exercise, read a book, find other activities that you find enjoyable, that will take your mind off the other things that are happening. And even for children, I think it's also very important to just be very open with the children, discuss these things with them, let them know that this is happening all over the world, and talk to them, treat them as little adults, so that they also are able to cope and do not regress. And then also, it's like, I cannot emphasize this. It's important to take care of yourself, because unless you take care of yourself, you're unable to pass this, you're unable to take care of everyone else. And the other thing is seek professional help. If you realize you're unable to cope, not being able to cope is not, it happens quite often, especially in a crisis like this, where it's a new thing, you don't know what's happening to you, you're a parent, you're an employee, you have no idea how to deal with this. So being unable to cope can actually happen. And it's important to even recognize this and be able to even acknowledge that I am not okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's fine. It's part of, it's not, it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do it. It just means that right now you're handling a situation that you're unable to deal with. And if you cannot be able to cope through it, you can actually talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to a professional, because there's no this stigmatization of mental health. We need to stop it. We need to discuss more about it in this country. Okay. Yes, I think I hand it over to you, Nelly.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Muthoni and Catherine. This has been a really insightful session for all of us. We've had quite some great participation and a large audience. And clearly we can see that our mental health has been affected. And also you've empowered us to accept the fact that we can discuss mental wellness and see how we can handle it in the different ways. We've seen that medical people are affected, our CEOs are affected, company owners, employers, parents, children, our elderly parents, everyone is affected. So we thank you again, and hoping that we can engage you once again in the future. We'd like to thank everyone who attended this session, and we want to encourage you to keep just looking at our digital platforms, because we continuously will be having different kinds of webinars. Next week, we will be conducting a webinar that's about the inside of the mind of Africa venture capitals during pandemics, and this will explain to us how venture capitals look at investing in companies, and especially during the season of pandemics and any other crisis that could be experienced globally. So thank you, everyone, and have a nice day. Looking forward to having you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly.
Thank you. Thank you.